morning. It's something about the cold weather. I've done this for years in different kinds of ways, but it's always funny to me. The cold weather, everybody seems to get cabin fever and they're chattier. I swear, it's just something about it. I don't know if you're just no. Feels that way to me anyway. So good morning. Today I'm Karena Stipp, and I am a senior specialist realtor, and a lot of you have heard the spiel, but I started this whole journey a number of years ago when I helped my mother downsize. And I didn't know then what I know now. It was painful, it was arduous, and it could have been easier. And now that I know what I know that I was the move manager and all the other things. And it is what it is. But that's part of what brought me on this journey, because I felt like people needed to know more. And I'm really committed to working with clients, ideally, who aren't having to work in crisis mode. I am currently working with a family who were in crisis mode. The mom died. They were referred to me. And when I had the conversation, they were referred as if they were the dad was going into senior living. And when I did the math and talked through it with the daughter, I said, huge concerns. He is going to burn through the little money he has in the next 3 years. And then what? Could he live with you then? And she said, he could, but our house doesn't work. We have a 2-story house. There's all the bedrooms and baths are upstairs. He has Parkinson's. He's a fall risk. So then we talked about all of the other options. And so that's what we're going to do today, is talk about retirement options for proactive people. And that's for people to have a plan B. So I'm going to start out by talking about community living options. And there's a lot. This way? Let me come over here, Bob. Is this better? Oh, I'm better over here. Okay. All right. I just need to be able to read it is the only thing. Okay. So let me start with the family I just mentioned, combined household, because that's actually the solution that they ended up choosing. So in this particular case, after much discussion, the mom just died, by the way, at the end of September. So that's where the crisis came in. And this family knew nothing about senior living, about any of the options, about the costs, none of that. So they've literally worked in crisis mode since mom died. And so the solution that they ended up choosing was to combine households. So they are selling their house, the couple. They have one under contract right now to buy that will be the right home for dad and the whole family. And then dad's house just went on the market right after Thanksgiving. So we've staggered it because he doesn't have a place to go in between. So we needed to have them going into the new house so that he closes after that and then can move straight into the new household. Make sense? So this will work for some families, but some of the questions that I asked my client, do you have siblings? Yes, I have a brother. Okay, so if dad helps you buy the next house with the equity from his, is that a point of resentment for your brother? Is he going to have a problem with this? Is he going to fight this? Because that puts a big monkey wrench in things, right? And she said, no, I don't think so. Would you talk to my brother and explain everything you've told me? Yes. So I called the brother. I talked to him. And basically, he just doesn't want to be involved. He just wants somebody else to deal with the headache. That's really what it boils down to, sadly. But the gift in that is that he doesn't care what happens with the money, whereas in some families that might be a big point of contention. And so all of those conversations have to happen in order for this to work. Now, conversely, I'm working with a lady who is going to buy a home. She's renting right now. She moved here from Atlanta to be close to her daughter, and she said we combined households initially. It lasted 7 months, and she was asked to leave. Did not work. Now, they're still, talking, still sees the grandkids. And Bob and I were talking about this before we started today, and I think one of the things that I hear from families who combine is that the parents have, meaning your adult children, have their own ideas about parenting their kids if the kids they're raising them in that household. And the grandparents may have a different idea. And that clashes when you're all under the same roof. So while it sounds like a good plan, in theory, it can really cause fireworks. So it's important, even when we went through the home that this family is buying together, when we looked at the bedroom and bath that are downstairs, I immediately pointed out it's a fiberglass tub shower combo. And so I said, most of the homes you're going to look at are probably going to have this. Will this work for your father now? And let me make sure you understand, if he needs grab bars, those suction cups are terrible. They are a hazard. They will slide down the wall. So we need to think about where could we put grab bars in the studs outside of the shower tub combo if you're going to leave this in place so that he can get in and out, right? So we're even thinking about that before they put a house under contract. And then I said, so this will probably work for a period of time, and then you may need to convert it to a roll-in shower or a small lip. Would you be okay with that? So I try to make sure that we talk through all of the scenarios so that we don't get into a world of hurt 2 years down the road when things change with Dad's health. So there's a lot to consider here, and it works for some. It does not work for all. Okay? Let's go to 55 plus homes, because client that was asked to leave the daughter's house is now looking for a 55 plus home. And she's also considering senior living, independent living down the road. So she already has started thinking about what will be my plan B. And big reason why I do this is I meet a lot of people who come up to me and say, Karena, I'm going to age in place. I've been smart about it. I have a ranch house. I've done all the things. My house is going to support me. I can be carried out in a pine box. I call those the pine boxers. And I think, good for you. If that's your plan, I hope that works for you. Here's the statistics. Less than 25% of people die at home. So the other 75%, what ends up happening is, even though you think you've made all the right, it's a ranch home, all the floors are solid surface, you've got wide doorways, all the things, there usually ends up being some kind of catastrophic health issue. And then it's rehab, skilled nursing, assisted living, something like that. And if you haven't planned for that as a possibility, you are left with the worst of the choices. It's scary. There's just not a lot of options if you're working in crisis mode. So if you think ahead, what if my pine box plan does not work? What would I do then? That's all I'm asking you to think of is what if, and have a plan B, because it doesn't work for 75% of people. So 55 plus homes are age restricted neighborhoods. They have nice amenities that are sometimes a golf course, sometimes they'll have an amenity center with a pool and maybe activities director depending on the size. They usually include lawn care or outdoor bushes and all of that. If you're in something that's an attached home, like a townhome, within that community there may be even more maintenance that's included, like the siding and the roof. So that works for a lot of people who are active adults. So in this client's case that we're going to look at houses tomorrow, again, she's looking for that for about the next 10 years. But she's also working on the plan B beyond that. So independent living, now we're going to get to going into a community. Now you'll notice, those of you who know me and hear me speak a lot, I never use the F word, which is facility. It sounds institutional, doesn't it? Yeah. So community is a choice. That's a choice that I make because community sounds like home. Facility sounds like someone's put me there. And so it's a community. And also the reason why I make sure that I use that terminology is it's different than it was when we were growing up. And I include myself in that group because how many visited a parent or grandparent or someone in their family that was in a nursing home back 20, 40 years ago, right? And what was that like for you? Depressing. Okay. It kind of smelled a little. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I remember at 7 having the distinct thought, I will never live in one of these places at 7 years old. My great-grandmother was in a nursing home, and we had shopped for the good one and drove 40 miles to go see her at the good one. Now, the reason why a lot of people think of facilities in that way is because that's what we had available to us for decades. So in 1983, assisted living was born, and that kind of changed the whole landscape. And out of that, we started to see independent living. So independent living is going to be, usually they're apartments, sometimes they're cottages or so forth. But independent living is going to be a community on a campus, whether it's within a building or on many acres. And it will include usually almost everything: utilities, housekeeping, meals. And there's all different variations of that and combinations. So you have to ask a lot of questions. And not all independent living communities are created equal. So some lean heavily into assisted living space, meaning they have occupational therapy, physical therapy on campus. They can bring that in if and when you need it. There's also companion care that's available in some of these. So you have to ask a lot of questions about what's available and how long would you be able to stay there. And some of them will ask you to leave nicely, but they'll say, we don't have enough support for you, and we think it's time for assisted living. Okay? So independent living is not licensed by the state. Assisted, memory care, continuing care, and skilled nursing, these are all licensed by the state. So assisted living is going to also be a community. It's going to be usually a smaller unit. It's going to be a higher cost, so you start getting into higher cost here. And they're going to help with ADLs, which are activities of daily living: toileting, bathing, getting dressed, all of the things that you normally do without any help. If you start needing help with that, that's assisted living. Now, some of those things you can get over here if you shop for the right one. So you could age for quite a while in independent living, depending on the community. But sometimes it gets to the point where assisted living, you just need that layer of support. They're going to have nurses there. They're going to have automatically 3 meals a day. They'll have snacks. All of that's hardwired into an assisted living because it's licensed and it's required. So it's a level of care above just being by yourself and bringing in some help. So let me go from assisted living to memory care. Memory care is very specific for someone who's obviously has dementia or Alzheimer's. But keep in mind, if you have been even diagnosed with Alzheimer's, does not mean you couldn't start out in independent living or even live there for a good long time. The key is for memory care, those units will be locked. The building is locked and you cannot leave. So the question I always ask if I'm working with a family who has a family member with that diagnosis, do they wander? Are they a risk to leave and not be found? Because then they're a danger to themselves and possibly others, right? Especially if they get into a car. So if they're not wandering, they just need a little layer of support, then independent living can save a whole lot of money. And it also can support them. You could bring in just a little bit of support as needed. Okay? Memory care is going to be locked down. It's specialized support. If the building is built specifically for memory care or that unit is built for memory care, a lot of times it'll be built in a circle. And the reason for that is the circle is reassuring for those who have cognitive decline. So there's very specific programs they'll have that will stimulate brain activity and help support people who have memory loss. Continuing care retirement community or life plan communities are referred to as both. It's kind of interchangeable. So CCRCs, and this is not 100%, but typically will have a buy-in. And some of them, many of them, will offer lifetime care. So you pay a six-figure buy-in, and I'm saying this in a general sense. There are exceptions, and you have to ask a lot of questions. There's a couple here in town who say that they're a CCRC, but then really they won't guarantee that you can stay there for life. So you have to ask those questions. So they're going to offer a full continuum of care. That's going to be one of their hallmarks, which means you come in independent, and they're going to probably require that. You'll have to pass both a health test and a financial test. And then you can cycle through. Let's say that you live in independent, but you end up having a knee replacement. They'll have rehab on campus. So you can go to rehab for a while and then go back to your apartment in the independent section. And then let's say that you start needing more help. So they'll determine this too. They'll have a conversation with you and say it's time to go to assisted living. And then they'll have skilled nursing on campus, and they also have memory care available. So that's all available in one building or on one campus of several acres. Now, skilled nursing is 24/7 medical care. This is what we used to have nursing homes. Our grandparents, maybe even your parents, have been in skilled nursing. The average person in the United States now that we have all these other options only spends about 2.5 months at end of life in skilled nursing. Average cost is about $15,000 a month. Now that can be paid, once you get to licensure, that can get paid here. This can be paid by Medicare, yeah.
That's today's dollars, right?
That's today's dollars.
15.
Yeah, so if you add 10 or 15 years that you live, 20 years, whatever the number is, then that number will go up.
And it goes up anywhere between 4 and 8%, right?
If all of these are going to go up at least that, yeah. So every single year, the cost will go up.
One question you said about the continuing care being licensed, are the ones like the difference between Springmore and Hayes, are they licensed the same way?
Yes, it's the same licensure process.
It's a different model the way you get in.
Yes, yeah, because it starts with ADL care.
Okay, so they're required to follow the...
That's right.
Okay.
Once the ADL care locks in, that's where the licensure locks in for the state. And so you can look up and see. Keep in mind, if you're reading reviews online, if you've heard of somebody who says, oh, my aunt was in, XYZ community however long ago, some of these, if you're seeing bad reviews, for instance, they'll sell out to another company, and then it starts the clock all over. So it really is best to ask a lot of questions of people who are in the industry and know, or ask friends, relatives, neighbors, who do you know that's living such and so place, and find out what their take is. Is it going to be 100% roses and rainbows? Probably not. Honestly, somebody's going to have a bellyache about something. But the question is always going to be, how does the executive director, how do the owners, how do the corporate people respond when there is a complaint? So there was apparently a cornbread uprising at Springmore, I'll just tell you. People didn't like the cornbread. People did not like the cornbread, and it was a big deal. So they made 4 different kinds of cornbread and had a bake-off, and everybody got to do a taste test and vote. Do you know the cornbread they chose? The same one they'd been eating all along. So while it's funny, what that tells you is the people who are managing that community, they listen and they respond. And that's what you're looking for is, have you all had a big complaint, and what was the remedy? What did you do? Okay. The one I didn't mention here, which is 55 plus apartments. So those are apartments that they just restrict the age. So they don't have any special support. They're going to charge as much or more than your usual apartment complex. But there's nothing special about them other than they may have ADA amenities versus some of the other apartment complexes you see. But there's not going to be any meals. There's not going to be an activities director, all of that. Okay? Any thoughts or questions about any of this? Okay. So this is the spectrum, and so we're going to look at the high end and the low end on cost over here. And down here, we've got the least amount of supervision and care to the most supervision and care. So I'm going to start over here with, we talked about CCRC. So that's the buy-in, and it has all of the levels of care. And then you've got retirement community. So this would be like a 55 plus. So think here in town, Del Webb, Traditions, Villas of Wake Forest. Those are the two that are in Wake Forest, okay? And there's more. I mean, they're all, the thing about a 55 plus, anyone who's considering that, those are mostly going to be found, if you look at the triangle at Raleigh, Durham area as a circle, okay? They're basically the crust of the pie. The 55 plus communities are all on the outer fringes. Wonder why? Cost. Because they're going to be primarily one-story homes. Now, a lot of them will have extra living space upstairs, like for the, if you're still active and you want to go up and you have a craft room, or if your kids come in out of town, they could stay upstairs. But all the primary living's down. And that means the foundation is bigger and spread out more. And that costs more money, and the land is directly related to that, obviously. So the land is less expensive when you get out on the crust of the pie, right? And that's why you see, especially the southern sphere, the southern part of our pie, lots and lots of 55 plus communities being built right now, because that land has been cheaper because 540 was not completed yet. Still isn't. Will be. Yeah.
Isn't that geographic pattern also reflected in the CCRCs? No, not really.
Well, you have, so there's some that, Hayes Barton just went in downtown. I mean, smack in the middle of downtown. So I don't know that I'd say that. It's not as much on the fringes, and Hayes Barton is brand new. So you have that exception if you're looking at that as a rule. Springmore has been there for 40 years, so that's a little harder to point to. So I think, and you look at Cypress is I think fairly well positioned. It's inside 540. It's not necessarily inside 440, but it's in 540. So I don't think it follows the rule of thumb there, because you don't need as much land. They build up. The Cardinal right there in North Hills, it's fairly new.
But
Okay.
if you ask the prices, it's reflective of what they paid for the place.
It is.
Cardinal and Hayes Barton.
They are, because that land was a premium, for sure. For sure. So if you want to be living in that area, it's no different than, I mean, you look at North Hills, for instance, and with all the, 70s houses that are being raised, and then they just build, they might split that lot in two and make two houses that are McMansions. So same thing, it's that land has become very desirable. So senior apartments, total freedom with access to other seniors, little to no activities. The cost is going to be less. So think $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 a month, but nothing with that other than just the apartment. Okay. Adult daycare is a low cost option. We have one here in Wake Forest. And so you pay a daily rate. It includes lunch if you want. And it can be a break for family members who are caregivers. So if you have someone who has maybe cognitive decline, that's usually the case, and family who's caring for that family member, and they need to work or go run errands or what have you, you could schedule a weekly thing every day of the week, Monday through Friday, or it could just be 1 or 2 days a week. So this is actually, I sponsor lunch once a month at the one here in town, and hang out with the people who live there or go there. And it's well run, and they have a lot of activities for them. It's nice. Yeah.
They also license?
I'm not sure what her licensure is required. I know Carla is the owner, Carla Payne. It's Aging Care Matters. On the back side of where, you know where it is? Off Rogers Road there? Okay. Where McCoy's, in that same plaza. It's on the back side. I know Carla has a number of certifications, and I don't remember them off, the top of my head, but she can help with placement. She can help. I mean, there's a lot of things. She's very, very well versed in that genre. She also owns an adult daycare. There's one or two in Durham, and then I think one in Raleigh. So she's got staff at each one. There's usually about 10 to 12 people that are there when I go. So every day there's people who are coming on a regular basis, and I only expect it to get busier because people will continue to age, and there will continue to be that need for that kind of support. Independent living is also over on the lower to medium cost. This is going to be places like here in town, you have the Lodge. Close by, we have the Gardens at Wakefield, Verena, on Falls of Neuse, Atria, Oak Ridge are the closest ones that are independent living. Then you can kind of branch out, and there's a number of other ones. The Cambridge has two here in town, one in Apex, one in Briar Creek. And they will have a variety of extras that are available depending on the community. Briar Point is one that I would use as an example as something that's a little bit different. So it's down in Morrisville, and they're cafeteria style. So you would go in and get a tray and just pick up the food that you want, and they have a dining time that's like 2 hours of the day. They also tend to have more vegetarian options because they're right there where there's kind of a concentration of people from India who are more vegetarians. So each one of the communities will have its own individual audience that it's catering to, and maybe specific things that might appeal to you or not. So very important to tour a number of them if you're looking at independent or CCRCs to see what does that look like for you and would that fit your lifestyle. Personal home care. So personal home care would be, let's say that you or a loved one starting to have decline in health or issues with health and needs help. So there's two different versions. There's home companion care, which are unlicensed but vetted usually through a company. They're going to be vetted. People who come in and can help with daily activities, like they can help do your laundry. They can clean the house for you. They can sit with someone if somebody needs just a companion that's there. They can help you get ready for bed. They cannot do any nursing care if they don't have that in their. You have to ask those questions about those companies, whether they're just companion care or whether they have health care available. And health care means a nurse would be overseeing the care that's administered. This will run you, this is a loose number, but around $30 an hour through an agency. Keep in mind, if you only need an hour, a lot of them have a minimum of 4 hours a day, and they may even require 4 days a week. So you have to ask those questions when you're hiring. Now, if you have a long-term care policy, an insurance policy that helps, it can lock in your doctor. You're going to have to jump through all the hoops, and you're going to have to check your policy specifically, but some of this can be paid for. I will tell you, when you get to personal home care, if you're bringing in 5 hours a day or more in help, it's less expensive overall to go to assisted living at that point. That's your break point. Now, some people may prefer to stay at home and they don't care what it costs, and that's your choice. So just know that that's kind of the line in the sand. If you're getting 5 hours a day of help or more, that's the point where it's going to save you money to go to assisted living because that's going to be private pay. Now, if you have the long-term care policy, it can lock in and help with that. So keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind about this, if you're needing some help and you've gone into independent living and they have under their roof a company that can come in and provide help, you can actually save money, which seems counterintuitive, but they will charge in as little as 15-minute increments because they're in-house and they have so many doors they can go knock on, or not knock on, but go to visits in a day. They can break it down to if you just need a little help with your medicine or a little help getting out of bed and dressed in the morning and then a little help at night, they'll charge in as small as 15-minute increments, so it saves you money versus that 4-hour minimum times 4 days. See where that locks in? So to me, this is especially a consideration if you're needing just a little help. My neighbor's sister-in-law just moved into a community here in town. She has Alzheimer's. She's in her late 60s now. And she is starting to need help with medication. Everything else she can kind of manage. And so they know part of the reason they chose this particular independent living community was because they knew that they had in-house a service that could come and just help with the medication. So that will cost them a lot less. First of all, because she's in independent living versus memory care. The difference for her, she's paying about $3,500 a month for her apartment in independent living. And memory care would have cost her, at the very low end, you might be able to get a shared room at $7,000 a month for memory care, but more like $9,000 to $11,000 a month. I know, right? The wow. I see some wows in the room. I know it's really pretty awful. In-home senior care is the other portion, and this is going to be where could include up to hospice supervision. So hospice, once you get to that point, and your doctor can order hospice, then Medicare will lock into 100%. You can do hospice at home. You can do hospice in a facility. There I am using the F word, in a hospice community. Hospice can be not necessarily end of life. So if you just need management, you have to ask the doctor about it. There's very specific rules about it. It has to be palliative care. And you can go on hospice and back off of hospice if you get better. And a lot of people don't understand that about hospice. They think it's only end-of-life care. It is not necessarily the case. And part of the reason to consider hospice sooner than later, I call it the fast lane. It's really a fast lane to getting to the medicine you need, to getting to some of the things you need, like a hospital bed in your home if you want to age at home, if you want to be taken care of there. All of those things, they just hop on it and it's taken care of immediately. My mom had hospice end of life, and it was a gift. To the point that my mom's best friend and I were really the caregivers. And at one point I worried she needed medicine. And I knew she had to go to a meeting that day, so I was the caregiver that day. But the medicine was going to run out. And the hospice nurse came to visit, and I said, I'm not sure, maybe I could run. How long are you here? Can I run to the pharmacy? She goes, Karena, we'll get it. We've got it. We'll run it by. So they just go to the pharmacy for you and pick it up, bring it to you. If you need, they're not diapers, adult diapers, but anyway, if you need those, if you need wipes, if you need, all of the supplies, they just bring it. They have it in their car. They bring it. If you call ahead, they're available. They have chaplains. It's just fantastic. So this is also an option depending on where you or your loved one are in the process. So let me come back up here. Assisted living, we've talked a little bit about that. That also does include socialization. And I think one of the things I haven't touched on with so many of these things, probably other than personal home care, if you're at home, if you're in independent living, if you're in skilled nursing, if you're in assisted living, if you're at a CCRC, even if you go to an adult daycare, to me, one of the big things that's important about that is the socialization. Loneliness is, to your health, the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Think about that. So all of these communities will have available opportunities to socialize and interact with other people. And that speaks to better health and longevity, both. So if you're thinking, I'm going to age at home by myself, I'm just fine, I'll be carried out in a pine box, thank you very much. There's almost a defiant thing with some people whenever they say it to me, and I'm like, okay. But that's actually not so great for you if you're not getting out of that house and going and interacting with people. And it has to be, you have to make a conscious effort, right, to do that. Respite care is available at a wide variety of facilities. It's temporary. So this could be, for instance, if you had a knee replacement and you really won't have any support at home and it's better for you to go to a rehab. So that is a conversation you have with your doctor, your health care provider, to see if that's something that you'd qualify for that's necessary. Dementia, Alzheimer, memory care. And we talked a little bit about this. This is just going to be high level of care. One of the things I didn't mention is there are specific group homes that are in neighborhoods. So it could be the house next door to you. There's one on the corner as I drive out of my neighborhood that's in a brick home that used to be a single family home, and it will house up to 4 to 6 patients. And so they'll have specific care that's just for that, and it's in this kind of neighborhood setting. Some people prefer that over one of the bigger facilities or communities. Okay, so that is an option for you. It doesn't necessarily save versus, the cost to me that I've seen, it's about the same. Part of it is how comfortable is someone in a setting like that. They are licensed, yeah. Yeah. Skilled nursing, rehabilitation, 24-hour supervision by a skilled nurse. Most of you and most of us won't see that for much of our life, ideally. And we talked about the cost. And then hospice is end-of-life support, could be palliative care. So any questions about any of that? Yeah.
I have a quick question on the adult daycare because of a neighbor situation.
Yeah.
Does a person have to be mobile or can they be wheelchair bound?
I would ask Carla that question, just call and ask. I'm trying to think. I know they help them.
I didn't know how independent.
Yeah. I know, they have some that they'll kind of help into the restroom because they've got restrooms down the hall. I've seen them, go in, and kind of make sure that they're okay. But what their level is, you'd have to talk to her. And I'm sure each one is an individual basis. Yeah.
Most of the CCRC places we've talked about, for that definition, they just say you have to be able to take care of yourself. And we've seen people with rollators and with wheelchairs and everything, and they're okay. They're considered independent as long as they can get around. And they don't need somebody to help them get into the shower or out off the toilet or something like that. They're okay doing it themselves. But it does vary widely, though they're not all regulated.
Yeah, and so two kind of different but kind of related things. So you will have to ask the questions if you're looking at independent living or going into a CCRC at the independent level. What is their idea of independent, right?
Some of them, the room that it goes around, you're supposed to be able to walk in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things that I would say about a strictly independent living community, sometimes I'll go tour with a client and they'll say, gosh, people seem kind of on the older side here. And here's the thing. If they seem like they're on the older side, meaning you're seeing walkers and wheelchairs and so forth, that means they can stay longer. And that may be a good thing if that's what you want to do. So if you're not able or willing to pay the CCRC buy-in, right, and you want to go this route, if you shop for an independent living that will lean heavily into assisted living space, meaning you can stay there for a good long time, this may be better for you if you shop for the right place, because they're not all created equal. Atria Oak Ridge has a special certification. It's the only one in the triangle. It's off Durant, just straight down Falls of News off Durant. And I won't remember, it's Moss is I think what she refers to. And I don't remember, multi-something, housing something. But what that certification does, the state issued that certification to just a few communities in the state when they were no longer issuing new assisted living licenses, which seems ridiculous. So they actually have some of their clients who have, even though it's an independent living community, some of their clients have a long-term care policy and they're able to pay their rent with that long-term care policy because they check the boxes to qualify for this special certification. And so they have 24-hour awake staff, and that's important, not just somebody who sleeps there and really isn't available if you call downstairs, they're sleeping in their apartment. So you have to ask that question. They have OT, PT, all of that on campus, and they even qualify to have a Hoyer lift. One of their clients there needs a Hoyer lift to get out of bed in the morning and then has a motorized wheelchair. So they would be a hybrid. The Cambridge at Briar Creek is another one that leans heavily into assisted living space. So they will have levels of care, just kind of like an assisted living. So assisted living, whenever you go into assisted living, they'll have a nurse who will do an evaluation of you. They're going to have a base rate for rent and care and all of that. And then they have level 1, 2, and 3 typically. It can be different. And levels 1, 2, and 3 are based on how much care do you need. And they'll charge accordingly. So level 1 is less, 2 is more, 3 is the most. And that'll have to do with, do you need oxygen? Do you need somebody who's there more often? Do you need help with medication? All of those things, toileting, bathing, that all means staff that are there hands-on helping, which costs more. It's one equals the other, right? So you have to ask the questions about that. And the reason why some of the independents will actually bring that help into you. Now remember, there's a cost associated with that. So the trade-off is, if you live in an independent living that you can bring the help to you and can afford it, the benefit is your base rate is going to cost you less and you get a bigger unit, because assisted always means smaller. You go into an assisted, wherever that one is, if you go into an assisted community, those units are smaller than an independent unit will be, always. So if you want your kind of traditional feeling home apartment with a full kitchen, and you stay in independent and choose to bring help into you and can afford to do so, there's a lot of people who like to do that. So ask the questions when you're touring to make sure that you'll get what you want out of that community once you move in there.
But can you, with independent living then, you're saying that that is going to be more equipped with ADA regulated stuff. But I could live in a regular apartment and pull in people. But because it's not like independent living, it's probably going to cost me more because I'll have to pay for the whole time. Whereas if I'm in independent living, you could have one nurse that comes and visits separate apartments.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that's the big difference.
And they're not nurses, so keep in mind, they're help, right?
So that's the difference though because independent living apartments can be very expensive versus a regular apartment, right?
So, yes and yes. So one of the things I would encourage you to do, and if you don't have it from me yet and you would like it, I have an Excel spreadsheet that is a cost calculator. So it will add everything up for you. So make sure I have your email and let me know before you leave today and I'll send it to you. So what I would recommend you do is, let's say you go tour 10 places, you narrow it to 2 or 3. Put those into the cost calculator and put in all of your daily living expenses now or monthly, okay? And that's, if you own your home, even if it's paid off, you still are paying property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, all of that, right? So make sure you calculate that whenever you're adding it up, because that adds up more than you think it does. And keep in mind that the community is going to include your utilities. It's going to include some form of meals, and every meal plan is a little different, so you have to ask those questions and see what works best for you. Independent living is meals. Senior apartment is not. They're just going to age restrict. Independent living is going to have meals, utilities, all kinds of activities, transportation. Yeah. And this is the reason why this worked well, for instance, for my neighbor's sister-in-law. She was still driving and really should not have been. She still owns the car. It's parked in the parking lot, but there's transportation there that's available. So she can go to the grocery. They'll have a, Harris Teeter Day is Tuesday, and they'll have a Walmart Day on Thursday. And then doctor's appointments, they'll take you wherever. And ask the question whenever you're asking about transportation, what is your radius? So a lot of times it'll be 10 miles for general stuff and 20 miles for doctors. Well, is it in Briar Creek? Is it in Wake Forest? Is it downtown? What's the 20 miles? And where are your doctors? So ask those questions.
So out of all of these, the independent living the senior apartments, and even to an extent the assisted living, those are monthly bills. Those are like rental.
Yes.
Only the CCRC is something you're going to have some form of ownership. You're going to be putting the six-figure amount of money down. Does any of that come back to your estate once you're gone?
That's a good question. So depends on what you negotiate when you go in, and depends on what contracts they offer you. So in some cases, you can have up to 90 to 100% go back to your heirs. Keep in mind, if you move in, let's say you go visit 3 CCRCs, you go on the list for 2, one calls you and you decide it's time in 3 years. They have a wait list of 3 years, because they will have wait lists, by the way. I didn't cover that. They're going to have wait lists of, some of them up to 10 years, even 20. It's crazy. Some of them are months. The smaller the unit, the less the time you wait. Okay? So then you go in. Keep in mind, they have a chunk of your money, $450,000, let's say, whatever the number is. Okay? So if they have $450,000 of your money, they're going to invest it, and you don't have any control over that. And they're going to make the money off of that. And that's part of what we'll fund if they have an endowment fund, and they don't all, and they promise to care for you for life. If you outlive the money, which means that you've beat the house, because they've bet against that, right? So if you outlive the money, then they have an endowment fund that they've made all the money off of everybody's investments that will take care of you.
Just to be clear, you don't own anything at a CCRC.
No, you don't.
It's not ownership, it's still rental, but this big thing that you're, just like you said, there's a good way to put it. You bet against the house, and you give them the $400,000, you're betting against, they're saying we're going to put that money towards your eventual care that you might need, and we'll agree to keep you here. And sometimes you beat it, and sometimes they beat you.
Right.
But you're basically getting insurance for that, for
Yeah.
that money. You're not owning anything.
There is an ownership model at the Cypress. It's the only one in town. So it's you own the apartment, and then you put it basically, there's a reshelving cost, okay, that when you pass away and your family sells it. Yeah, so there is that option.
They also told me that if you had $2 to $3 million, we might think about letting you in.
Yeah, Cypress is a higher threshold for sure. John?
And with the CCRCs, in addition to the buy-in, you also pay a monthly rent, correct?
Yes, you do. So in addition to the buy-in, you pay a monthly rent. It starts, the lowest is independent living. So think, I'm just going to average it, $5,000 or $6,000 on the lower end. And it'll go up then each level of care. And assisted is going to be next if you cycle through. So if you get to assisted, it's going to be more like $7,000 a month.
Your monthly rate will increase as your care needs increase.
Oh, yeah.
So like say we went in together,
Yeah.
and now he needs to go into dementia care. I found enough, he's going into dementia care.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gonna like double it because we're separate living.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can't stay together.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
it's not quite double though.
Yeah.
It's not, but you are paying for, and you're in 2 different parts of the campus. So if let's say that Henry, right? Okay, so sorry, Henry, but I'm going to use you as the example. So if Henry has dementia and you both go into independent living, you're accepted in independent living, right? And you're at a CCRC. There will be a point if Henry really needs that support, they're going to say to you, it's time for him to go to memory care. Now, the difference with if you went to independent living and you were not at a community that had other levels of care, assuming that Henry never wanders, they'll let him stay indefinitely. Okay? They're going to have assessments and really force the issue in some cases. Now, you have a conversation, but because they have these other levels of care, they will have a hard stop where they say, this is enough, we're not going to allow you to stay in independent anymore. Okay? See, that's one of the differences between this and this. It is. Now, I will say, Atria Oak Ridge is a perfect example. They just had a very transparent conversation with a client of theirs, a resident, and his family because he had started to wander. And they said, this is no longer the place for you. So that will happen even here. And then he had to go to a whole separate community, right? Memory care.
Yeah, but I just want to tell you something. My mother was in a very expensive place, and she was no longer when we had dementia. She fell down in their care and broke a hip, and they told her, "You gotta go." Like, we couldn't, after we brought her to the hospital and a long-term facility, because she was healing, they told us they wouldn't take her back. So it also does happen in these.
It could, and that might mean that she would go from, where is the memory care, wherever it is. Yeah, memory care to skilled would be probably the transition there. Yeah. Yeah, and so this would have to be a place that would provide not only the 24-hour care, but a lockdown area if she's still mobile enough to get out and get around. Yeah, and then you're really going to have to find where is that place.
I was going to suggest you might want to talk about, you had mentioned the CCRCs as being $450 to get in.
Yeah.
And not all that way.
No, I just use that as an example.
But like the Cardinal or the Dave's Barton, it's only 2 months rent to get in, not $450, so it might be 25 or 30. But their rents are way up there. They make up for it in the cost of the rent.
Yeah.
And the other thing about getting booted out, you can ask for their contract and have it reviewed, because the contract will spell out whether they can boot you out or not.
Yeah.
For the CCRCs. Isn't that true?
It will. And so one of the things you want to do is the key factors to consider, and we'll get to your point here, Tom. So choosing the type of community that's right for you now and in the future. So think about not only now, but what would this look like if your health declines or your spouse, okay? An annual health needs assessment. So how are you feeling now? When do you think this might be the right time? Do your research on what services are provided for each community type, because they are not all created equal. Do a financial assessment. Talk to your financial advisor. I had a lady who was referred to me. She'd gone to independent living, and when I first started talking to her, she'd already signed a contract at a community. She's backed out of it. She didn't even talk to her financial advisor. She's making these decisions in a vacuum, and I don't know what she has put away. It's not my business. I just know that she's told me she's decided she cannot afford it. Well, how did she not know that when she signed the contract? If she had done her due diligence, but she lost her significant other, her sister has health issues, and she's literally just working in what she feels like is crisis mode. So if you do your homework ahead of time when there's not a crisis, then you're not making the wrong decisions later. And so this is a big piece of it. You need to talk to whoever manages your finances and find out, will this work for me now and going forward? Just like I did with this family that has the houses under contract right now. And when I said to the daughter, yes, from what you've told me, the community that your dad's going to look at and what his income is right now every month, it will pay for it. However, every single year, the rates go up. And Tom's going to argue with me. 5 to 7 is kind of the number I say. I know you have a number that you think it's,
Hey, you're absolutely right. But I'm going to say, beat them over the head for that number.
Yeah.
They don't want to tell you that number, what the rate of increase is, either historically or projected. But that is, some of them are 3.5% to 4%, and some of them are 8%. They're in that range.
And they'll tell you one thing when you tour, and then they'll change it. I had one community, they changed it significantly once they filled the building. So sometimes they have special rates. They'll bring you in, and you'll get a really killer rate for a year. So you sign a lease for that year, and then it goes up significantly the next year. You've got to be able to factor that in.
So I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
So say suppose you own your home, there's no mortgage on it.
Yeah.
And you're in fine health. You can go up and down those stairs,
Right.
like bedrooms or upstairs. But you're trying to think long term.
Right.
And you're thinking, I want to go over to say Del Webb because I'm going to be carried out in a box. But you're saying most people aren't, that it's really only temporary. So then it doesn't make sense to move to a smaller house if you can still go up and down until you actually need to.
Well,
And then if you're looking at it and you're saying, well, now that I'm in my mid-70s, maybe I need one for living.
mm-hmm.
sense to just go rent an apartment? Because then you have the money from your house, which you can invest, which is a nice chunk of change.
Right.
And then when it's time to find another place, it's easier than trying to get out of your house.
So there's a lot of factors. There's a lot to consider. Okay, so let me just.
What she was saying, because I was not able to hear it.
What she's saying is, wouldn't it be better off just to, I'm going to summarize, to just stay in the place where she's mobile right now, and why would it make sense to move to like a 55 plus community and so forth? So let me give you some general numbers. So 65 to 75 are considered the go-go years. Those are the years where we are checking the bucket list items. I want to go to Greece, I want to go to Spain, I want to go to Australia, whatever your things are. You know, I want to jump out of a plane. Those are the 65 to 75 year bucket list times. 75 to 85 are considered the slow go years. These are generalizations. Okay? You're still moving around, might go see the kids for Thanksgiving. It's a little more trouble to get through the airport. You know, maybe it's starting to get a little harder to go up and down the stairs, starting to think about the creaks, you know, when, you know, everything's not quite as gelled as it used to be. 85 and on are considered the no-go years. Now, are there exceptions to that rule? Yes. And so that's where it comes into age versus stage. So if you make it to the age of 80 and you are without any major health issues, heart, cancer, diabetes, chronic things, right? You're very likely to make it to 100. I see your sourpuss face back here. But that's important to understand. What does your family, you know, lifeline look like? Have you had aunts, uncles, mother, grandparents who've lived to be well into their 90s? Because you're much likelier to make it to 100, again, assuming that you don't have any major health issues, because they've already done that, and healthcare is even better now. So then you've got to plan for that. Let's say that your 65 to 75 years are your go-go and you do want to do all the bucket list stuff. Maybe a 55 plus makes sense for you in Del Webb because the lawn's taken care of. You could leave for 2 months and go to Australia and never have to worry about anything. The house is all locked up. You got a neighbor, Bob, next door who's fantastic. He'll take care of the cat and you're off to the races, right? So it's part of this is about what are those choices? What does your life look like during that period of time, and what do you want to accomplish? And is it easier to downsize from that 2-story, maintenance required, needs a new roof in 5 years house versus the new construction 55 plus somebody's mowing my lawn every week? Right? Part of this is lifestyle.
The other thing is if you buy a smaller home like a Del Webb, you're building equity as you're living there, and you can sell it when you decide to move.
Yes.
If you move into a community, you're paying rent and it'll go up every year. There's no equity.
That's right. Yeah. And so also think about what does that 55 plus Del Webb community look like for you? Do you like the idea of immersing yourself in all of the activities that are available to you that are really for people in your same boat, right? They're in your same stage of life.
But a 55 plus community, you own it. If you own versus owning a house in a regular mixed neighborhood, say for when you go to sell that 55 plus home, you have a smaller audience to draw a buyer from.
You do, however, 11,000 people a day turn 65 in the United States right now. And every single day, rinse and repeat, 11,000 people a day, okay? I'm going to be part of that. I'm 57. So I'll be, right in that at the tail end of what's called the senior tsunami. We currently have a little over 100,000 people over 100 in the United States today, but by 2050, that number will morph to 400,000 centenarians. So 300,000 more will be added in the next 20 years, 25. So that pool of buyers is only going to grow. And I don't see, yes, could it be longer days on market? Potentially. But I'll tell you, like Del Webb, for instance, when they were selling and still finishing like the last houses as they were finishing up that neighborhood, originally those were selling in the 200s and they're easily in the 5s now. So, again, gaining equity, lifestyle, all choices you have to make. I'm not saying it's the right or the wrong. None of these, I'm telling you, none of them. I'm not telling you what's right for you at all. I like to sit down and have an individual conversation because Joan's situation is different than Tom's situation, is different than Bob's and Barbara's, right? Everybody's different. And it's just like a financial advisor. Like, one person wants to leave it all for their kids. It's all about legacy. And the next person says, I'm spending every last dime. I work for all that money, and I'm going to make sure I check every box I can check on the list. So everybody's different, right? It's a very personal decision. What I will say is, if you're fine in the 2-story or the 55 plus or whatever your formula is, don't wait too long to get into your plan B, or they won't let you in. That's part of this, the moral of this whole story. Don't wait too long. And so you've got to learn the cost, figure out, is this going to work for you? At what point do you pull the trigger? And you've also kind of got to think about your health trajectory during that time. That's part of the formula. I don't even remember what your question was earlier, and I was going to get to it down at the bottom. Did I answer it? There was something you mentioned, Tom, but the qualification requirements, ADL, are different for different communities. So, Joan, is it okay if I share? Okay. Yeah. Getting in and looking at the contract. So that's not only do you want to have a financial assessment, but also talk to an attorney, an elder care attorney who knows these contracts. Have them look before you sign. Okay. But Joan's husband is in a wheelchair. And as they were looking at communities, they like Briar Creek, the Cambridge, because their pool is 4 feet deep instead of 3. And that makes a difference for him getting out of the wheelchair into the lift and down into the water. 1 foot. So they're not all created equal. You've got to ask a lot of questions. Probably my one beef with the Cambridge, they put in standard toilets. They're not tall toilets. So what people do is they end up putting in one of the things that makes it tall, and it's no big deal. But you would think, they're all just a step-in shower. It's pretty easy. For most people that works, just a small lip. It may not for everybody. You can, by the way, amend your apartment. Now, you leave all those improvements behind, but you can go in and put in a ceiling fan. You could put in wallpaper. You could put in a whole different shower. You'll just leave that when you leave the community. So if you plan on staying there for a good long time in that unit, you pay for it. Yeah, absolutely pay for it. But if it...
One of the things that bugs me too is that when you go in these places, they'll say, well, the previous tenant added all the ceiling fans and redid the kitchen and had new countertops put in, and they paid for it, but now it's here for you. And oh, by the way, we're going to charge you more for the apartment. They didn't pay to do it, but they charge me for it because it's there, because it's a thing that they can offer. And I would mention one other thing too, and I heard this at the Cambridge, when you talk about ADL compliant, they are not all ADL compliant. Only a small segment of them.
Yeah, you really have to do, if that's super important to you, like as it is to Joan and her husband, then you've got to ask the right questions and make sure that those things are in place. Now, if it checks enough boxes, Joan and I have had the conversation about amending the shower, potentially, if and when they decide to move into that community, right? And so that may be something that you think, okay, well, I would be okay with, putting XYZ dollars into this, because then the next 10 years, potentially, we would stay in that same place.
And some of the communities will split the cost with the tenant. Like Magnolia Glen, a woman wanted a fenced-in backyard because she wanted to let the dog out.
Okay.
And I don't know what the percentage was, but they split the cost. And of course, she left it when she left, but it wasn't all on her.
And remember, there is an upside for the community if you're putting a significant improvement in. So it doesn't hurt to ask if they would share in that. It doesn't hurt to negotiate. Some of these, they'll be strictly month to month when you go in. You may not even sign a year lease to begin with. Sometimes you do. Some of them have leases. They will let you out of the lease. If, for instance, let's say that you've just signed your 12-month lease and 2 months later you have something catastrophic happen with your health and you've got to go to assisted living and there's just no other choice. They'll let you out of that. So, because honestly, they've got people in line who will go into that unit. Okay, but yes, exactly. Then they'll up the price. Yeah, but ask lots of questions and never feel afraid to negotiate or renegotiate if you're living in a unit. There's even a case where I heard through the grapevine that there's one particular unit that's really at a premium, and the owners were willing to pay the people who live there, to move out of it into a different one. They would pay for the move everything so they could rent it at a higher rate to somebody else. And the people did it. Question back here.
That last comment that you made was something that I had been thinking about because, all these different phases. I mean, the CCRC is appealing to me more because I hate to move. Move is a 4-letter word, people. And I did it. I mean, my husband passed away and I was on my own and it nearly killed me. And so, as we're getting older,
Right.
we have to think, okay, are we going to have help? Are we going to depend on someone to come in and help us go through everything, dispose of things, transport it to the new place? And how many times do we want to do that for the rest of our life? I mean, that's a critical point.
So you bring up a good point. So the average person over 65 moves 3 times before they die. But keep in mind, if you're in a CCRC and you think you're getting out of that, you're not, because you move from your independent unit to assisted living, which may be another building or a part of the building. Then you may move to memory care, let's say, and then you may move to skilled nursing. Okay? So there's still a move. It's just on the same campus or within the same building.
Okay, that's a good question. Do they provide the help for you to do
You know,
that? Or
I don't know if they do. I do know I have a client who moved into a community here in town, and she had a son who was strongly opinionated about her moving to be near him in a cold state. And badgering would really be the word I'd use. And so we had lots of conversations about it, and she just kept telling me, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. And we talked about her daughters who lived in other states. And so I finally said to her, what if you get your way now, basically, and you move into local, and now you've made the big downsize, and you stay for a period of time. And then if you feel like you need more support, help, interaction, at some point you discuss it again with your son. So 2.5 years after she moved into the community here, he has one, and she's moving to that state. So he did all kinds of due diligence to his credit. Sounds like he did a lot of touring. He did a video tour with her, and she sounded excited. She called to tell me she was moving. So and one of the conversations that we'd had was the cost to move will be less once you've already done the downsize. You've already done the big move, and then it's just whatever's left in your apartment that's pretty much going to fit into the next, if you move to a similar size. And she is moving to a similar size. She moved into another 2-bedroom. It actually will have a few more square feet than this one. So if there are people who move from one to the other, independent in particular, and when they do that, the cost is relatively inexpensive. My neighbor's sister-in-law just moved from Garner to Briar Creek, and the mover bill was under $1,000. Now, they didn't do anything as far as making a floor plan or any of that, but they moved her from Garner to her new apartment, put everything in place. Yeah, and then she still had to unpack and so forth. Yeah.
And I will say, after going through what I did some of it myself. I did hire a professional mover. And of course, I didn't have a house yet, so I was 4 months homeless, but I still had a place to live, so I had to go into climate controlled storage and all that. But I will tell you, looking back on it, I would have paid any price. Just do it for me. I don't care what you do, just get it done. It was that awful for me.
Well, and there are move managers that's a whole industry that's available for that. So if you are dreading that whole process, the lady that I just mentioned that's moving to the cold state, she used move managers. She'd lived in her house for 30 years, and she had a bonus room. I really couldn't walk in. I mean, it had become the junk room that everything just got thrown in there. And the garage was full. It was just, there was a lot of stuff. And so the move managers that she hired helped her select what furniture would go into the new place. They made a floor plan. They helped her go through the whole house, pack what she was taking, moved her in. Then they did estate distribution, and then they hauled off everything that wouldn't go into the estate sale and cleaned the house out. Now, there's a cost to that, but if you are exhausted at the thought of doing all of the downsizing. There is help, and there's help in, you can also do it a la carte. So you could have a company like that come in and say, okay, well, here's the whole quote. That's what I suggest you do, because it's free for them to come give you a quote. And then if you, let's say you have them do that now, but you're really not going to move for a year or two, you start whittling on stuff. They come back in a year or two, they do a reevaluation, and the cost will go down, likely. Now, they may raise their rates, but, you know, the cost will go down if you've really cleared out a lot of the things in between now and then. Now, what I do recommend you do is go through, for women especially, go through your clothes and your jewelry yourself and get rid of that. They'll tell you how many inches of hanging space you'll have for your clothes. So if you're somebody who, I don't know anybody like that, but if you happen to be a clothes horse and you use more than one closet in the house, then you need to start thinking about it if you're going into a one bedroom, because you're only going to have so many inches of hanging space and even so many drawers that you're going to be able to put that in. So you've got to think about it, and you need to start making those decisions. That's easy. It's that and pictures. Those are some things that you could do yourself, and then leave the rest to the people that you pay to come in and take care of it.
One more question.
Okay.
About the CCRC, you pay the upfront, the entry fee, and then they continue to go up, say, every year, anywhere from 4 to 8%. So, of course, everything else is going up too, and we don't think that maybe our income is going to be going up. So eventually, if you should run out of money, and I know they do all of this actuarial stuff.
Yeah.
In advance, but if you should run out of money, then you're still safe because you've given them that upfront.
If they promise to care for you, you have to make sure of that, if they do, because they will have a lower buy-in. They'll call themselves a life plan community, and then they'll even say to you, we may or may not have the room for you in certain areas. So you've got to make sure that if that's super important to you, then ask those questions. Have it run by an elder care attorney. Make sure that you are not homeless at the end of this if that money runs out and you live to be 115. You've got to make sure of that.
Make sure they will always have a place for you.
Yes. Yes.
I will say this, we've been looking very heavily into CCRCs. In general, and I'll just say very much in general, the not-for-profit ones that are run by organizations like the Methodist Church or the Lutheran Church or something, they in general will have a contract that will say you can stay here forever. And they'll have an endowment fund, which is people donating money to help cover that. And in general, their entrance fees will be much higher as well, because they're buying that insurance to allow them to do it. If you go to a place like Hayes, Barton, or Cardinal, they have a much lower entrance fee, and they don't have anything. If you run out of money, goodbye, you're done, in general.
I think it's true.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think Cambridge is one that does not guarantee. They have all 4 levels, but they don't guarantee placement.
They're not a CCR.
Cambridge is not a CCRC. Springmore is one that is, and they are a nonprofit, and they do have an endowment fund. Last I knew, they had 6 people living on their endowment fund. So you've got to ask the questions about it, and even ask who is on the endowment fund. But you can get into Springmore. There's different levels of entry. So the last time I toured with a client was about 8 months ago there, and it was about 200,000. That also depends on the unit that you go into. I don't remember the exact number. I'm rounding. So 200,000 to get in.
The one problem with Springport, they want 5% of the entrance fee just to get on their list. So they wanted $17,500 just to get on the list to be considered to get in.
But keep in mind, so Springmore is a good example. The 1-bedroom apartments are probably a year wait list. The 2 bedrooms are more like 2 or 3 year wait list. They have some villas that are attached, like patio type homes. Those are probably a 5-year wait list, and the 20 individual homes that they have on their campus are about a 7-year wait list. So if you're thinking about it now, you've got to get on the list. You've got to figure out what list do you want on it, particularly if it's a CCRC. And those numbers will probably only get worse. We already talked about the 11,000 people a day turning 65. So you're going to have more and more competition as people figure this out and start to get themselves on the list. And some of them will even tell you, put your name on a couple of lists, and then when the unit comes up that you want, you can always tell us no. What if you're on the list and you get to the top and they call and say, hey, Henry, we've got your place. Do you want it? And you go, oh, gosh, we're not quite ready. They're not going to drop you to the bottom of the list. You still stay at the top. Ask.
Some of them do, they'll give you 2 shots, and then they drive you.
Ask. And the other thing to keep in mind is they'll have an internal list and an external list. So if you are friends with somebody who lives at Springmore, and you go, well, the Smiths moved out. I want, I'm at the top of the list. They go, well, yeah, but the Johnsons who live here have been waiting for a place like the Smiths, so they get priority.
There's one very important thing to your point. You were given an example, what if your spouse went into memory care or something like that? In that internal list, they'll let you drop down to a much smaller apartment with a much smaller rental, while your loved one is in the other place, which will help you save money long term. You're not stuck staying in the same place, even within CCRC.
Yeah.
They'll let you drop down to a much cheaper place.
From a 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom, if it's available. Yeah.
If you don't need the space, but
Yeah.
you get on that internal list, and you'll be number 1 to be considered for the smaller, and the smaller places turn over much quicker. Like you said, it's 1 or 2 years.
And sometimes it's a surprise. I had a client, she again referred to me. She was on the wait list at Walton Wood. I went and met with her 2 months ago, I think, and she was 6 months to a year out for a 1-bedroom. So I said, well, there's no sense. The paperwork with real estate changes about every July, okay? So I said, we could fill out the paperwork, and, it could be null and void by the time you get called, so we'll just wait. Gave her some advice on things to do in the meantime, and then bam, I get a call a few weeks ago, and they had a small 2-bedroom that came available. So she was considering it. So I had a conversation with her. I said, well, what do you think about that? Well, I'm excited because she told me she didn't like the fact she had to wait 6 months to a year whenever I first met with her. So I said, okay, so can you afford it? Have you had that conversation? I just need to make sure I'm checking that box before we proceed, right? Like, I need to, in good conscience, know that you're okay. Yep, I'm good. Okay, well, we can do this, because she was worried she couldn't do it in time. She seems to think she has like a copious amount of belongings, and honestly, it's one of the best ones I've seen. So her idea of it and what she really, like, 1 bedroom was totally empty when I met with her. Now all the closets are empty. I was back this week, signed the listing agreement. So it'll go on the market January. So, sometimes it can change faster than slower. Yeah.
As far as the endowment fund, I guess, perk, I would suggest that you make sure you get that in writing, and they may not want to put it in writing, but I know of a personal situation where my cousin is 99 years of age, and she is in a nonprofit, religious affiliated place, not in this area, and the fact that she was running out of money, and a few other people who were running out of money, they were told bye-bye.
Yeah. Do your due diligence, look at their financials. If they've been around for a while. One of the things I always think is a good idea, I always arrive for any tour early, pretty early. And I'll just kind of say, I'll check in at the desk and I'll say, hi, I'm here traffic was better than I thought. And then I go right into the lobby and I look for residents, and I want to sit next to them and ask questions. Because what happens when you go on the tour with the sales director, they're going to swing by because they know that Gail is Chatty Cathy, and Gail is everybody's friend, and she loves it here. So they're going to, not that she's a plant, she happens to be there. They don't do that. But they're going to swing by Gail and say, and introduce. And Gail's going to say, Tom and I love it here. You should come sooner than later. It's wonderful. Everything about it is wonderful. It's all roses and rainbows. Now, they're going to know that Barbara is the bellyacre. Sorry, Barbara. Were you really? Maybe Barbara goes with bellyacre. I'm sorry. So they're going to know that about Barbara, so they might swing a little wide, right, when they're doing that tour. So know that there's going to be some of that happens. They have ambassadors. They've asked these people to be ambassadors, and if you eat a meal, sometimes they'll ask you to sit with the ambassador, and the ambassador is also going to be all the wonderful things. So ask some tough questions of them and say, well, I understand you really like it here. What about the people who haven't? What say they? what do they say, right? Have you had any situations where people were incredibly unhappy? And then try to discern, is that a Barbara Bellyaker, or is that indicative of something deeper and that you need to really, pick up the rug and look underneath and see if there's a problem at that community? Ask about their longevity. How long have they worked there? And the turnover is going to be in the dining room, always. So the lower paid, that's where the turnover is going to be. But if they've got, Maria is a housekeeper and she's been here 20 years, the staff in the office has been there for 30 years, or however, since they've opened. Briar Creek has a cook who's there for 10 years. Briar Creek's only been open for 3 years. The cook came from their Wilmington community that has been open longer. So that tells me he likes the company and they've worked with him to bring him here because he wanted to move to Raleigh from Wilmington. Yeah, back here.
So I wanted to make a point about what you just said about some of the people within these facilities are tenured as well, which is good because, they have seniority and they're going to stay there.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is one thing I found out. The other thing, this is a personal experience I really want y'all to know about. I went to a lunch and it was beautifully done. I mean, I'm a visual person anyway, and I love things when they go the extra mile. The food was excellent in this lunch. The tables were beautifully set. The room was very well laid out, had all the visual aids we needed. And it also looked out onto a natural setting, onto a parking lot. So after the meeting, I wanted to wander around a little bit. And they really didn't, I could tell they really did not want us to stay unless we had someone with us. So I managed to manipulate my way into the dining room. They didn't want me to go in the dining room. I could tell. Well, we're not set up for dinner. We don't start until 12 o'clock. Oh, that's okay. I have some time to spare. And I just kept pushing myself. The reason I did this was because of my experience with my mother at the place where she lived in another state. So I did manage to get in, but in the process, they sent their chef out to talk to me. And he starts telling me about all the wonderful things, how they rotate the menus, and everything is made in-house except for the desserts because they can't employ a pastry type person. But they have plenty of choices, the problem from outside. So when I did finally make my way into, and I had to be a little bit pushy, into the dining room, and they started to bring the food out. Of course, they come and take their order and everything. I was shocked when I saw that they were giving sandwiches and hot pies in the little tin.
Oh.
Yes. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is so different from what I saw at the lunch. And I began to realize he's just told me everything's made in-house. Well, yes, that was warmed up in-house.
Yeah.
And so, I think food is one place. That's where they did it. My mother.
Agreed.
That's one place that they will make so when you're invited to something and it looks too good to be true, sniff around a little bit, and like you say, look for someone who's not an ambassador. The ambassador.
They will. They have ambassador tags, and they all have name tags. As a rule, they'll all have name tags. Whether they wear them or not is their choice. But keep in mind too, if you've gone and that's one of your top contenders, ask if you can be put on their mailing list. And then when they have events, because they have a lot of events, so they'll have casino night, they'll have family day, they'll have all these different things. Ask if you can be put on that list. You'll then be invited. They want you to come. And they're going to roll out the red carpet and they're going to have all these things, but you're going to have the chance to mingle with a lot of residents at those events. And that's when you ask a lot of questions. Right? So ask all the hard questions. The meals, I think, are one of the biggest things. If they're included, it's important. You're paying for it anyway in whatever form, and there's different ways that gets divvied up. But eat there several times. Come for breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever. Come ask if you can use their exercise community and or their exercise facilities and see if you can, come try that out and do a class and see what that feels like. A lot of times they'll be very open to you doing a test drive in one way or another. If they have an open apartment that's furnished, if they're newer especially, they may even let you come stay for a week for free just to see what it's like. Now, when they get filled, that's not going to happen because they're filling those too fast. But ask those questions. One of the other things it's popped in my mind several times, if you are a couple, they will have the base rate for rent, and then they'll charge another $800, $1,000 a month, something like that, for the second person. So keep that in mind, that's going to be charged, and part of that's going to be meals. And
The entrance fee goes up if you're a couple.
oh, okay, all right. So there's another one.
Twin Lakes. I was going to add to her point about going to the meal.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times what they'll do is, if you say, I'd like to have lunch and see how the meal is, they'll go sit you off to the side so that nobody comes near you. And you have to ask, say, let me go sit with that bunch of people over there, so that you can, because a lot of them get real gabby about it. We did that at the arena when we went to eat there, and boy, did we get an earful from some of the residents that were in there.
Yeah.
All the gossip that goes around the place.
Oh, and it is days of our lives. I mean, it's, yeah.
I want to make one more point.
Yep.
Be quiet. Just do what you have just said. I was at a table, they seated me at a table with several people, and then more people came to that table that I don't think they expected them to. I was told that they had one apartment that I kind of like, well, we have this one available. That's all we have right now. If you're ready, really jump on this, because, this is one of the most popular programs. So as I'm having this meal with these people, more people came and sat down. And the conversation that I'm overhearing is really shocking to me. They said, we've never had this many vacancies before. What do you think's going on? I mean, they're talking among themselves. And as I got up to leave, and, I had enjoyed the conversation with them and everything, and they said, negotiate.
Negotiate. Yeah.
As I'm getting up to leave, they're putting these secrets in my ears. So, it's crazy. I can't believe.
And there can be a really stable community that has a new staff member come in, and it can really change the whole dynamic of that community. So it's happened here in town. There's one in particular in Durham that I always warn against if I have anyone interested in that one, because I know who the executive director is, and she's run people off she runs off the staff, and that runs off people who live there. So it doesn't mean you couldn't avoid it. I mean, you could go in with the best setup ever, and they still could have a change in staff, and that could change the flavor of it. One of the nice things about being an independent, starting out independent versus going into a life plan community, is that you would have the autonomy to leave easier. Whereas with a life plan community, if you've put that money down, depending on how you're locked in, it would be harder. Now, they tend to have less turnover at the life plan communities or CCRCs. So if they've been around a while, and there's several here in town that are KISCO communities, KISCO will bonus all of their employees clear down to the dishwasher. And they like working there, and they stay longer. KISCO, KISCO. That's, Magnolia Glen, Cardinal. I can't remember who. I'm trying to think who else is. Abbotswood is KISCO. Yeah, so there are certain management companies, the corporate companies that own these, and depending on what their structure is, their employees tend to stay within, even if they move from one building to another, they may stay with KISCO because they like that corporate structure, and that's always a good thing. Employees are happy, you're going to be happy. I'm being recorded. We'll talk later. I will share it, but yeah, I don't know why that's not switching. So don't wait for a crisis. Do your homework now. Have the important conversations. Emergency decisions, I guarantee you, are stressful and often will not align with your wants. And put it in writing. So whatever you're doing with that community, put it in writing. We have Downsizers Club a week from now. So that's the turquoise one. That's the last one of the year, December 17th. And we're going to be discussing tips for hiring estate liquidators and movers. And then the schedule for next year is the pink one. I changed the colors so it's easy at a glance. So that's next year, the pink one. And you have the new postcard with the seminars for the first half of next year. So you've got all those dates and times and so forth. That's that. So next month is the truth about selling your home as is, what to do and not to do. Did anyone come that brought a friend? I always forget to do this because I get busy talking to somebody when we come in. Anybody bring a friend? Okay. And all of these, almost all of the seminars, save the few who have proprietary information won't allow themselves to be recorded, are available for replay on southernaccenthhomes.com. So you can go there if you want to see any of the subjects that you've missed out on. Okay. Any last questions or comments, Barbara? Who's not a bellyacre, just for the record.
I'm trying to figure out what are 2 or 3 advantages to doing a CCRC. I'm really not seeing them, I guess.
I think a lot of it comes down to peace of mind. Once you've found the place that if you want to, and a lot of it, some people go because they have friends there or they like that location. So it's a very personal choice. I see probably a lot more people go to CCRCs that have no children or have children that won't be involved. And they want to know that they're just simply going to have staff that's going to lock in and take care of them if and when the time is there. So it's one of those kind of things that if you ever want to have the conversation, I'm happy to do that. And by the way, I don't know that we remember to put a slide in, but we are doing community tours. So next month, let me just get my calendar. Next month is the Cambridge at Briar Creek, January. The 22nd. So I'm still waiting to hear. They're going to verify with me if they have the van available to transport us. So I'll announce that later. If you want to reserve a spot, let me know if you haven't already. I think we've already got like 9 or 10. February, we're going to do the Cambridge at Apex, and that's on the 10th. March will be the Gardens at Wakefield on the 12th. I don't have one scheduled right now in April, but May I have. Oh, May is going to be Verena, but we haven't scheduled a date yet. But that's further out. Okay. So if you want to do the group tours, you're welcome to join in with. You can email me and say I want to be added to this one, this one, this one, and we have caps on some of them. Cambridge, they haven't capped us. They've got a big enough area that they can accommodate everybody. But what they're doing is a group tour and then lunch. No, that's what I need to do is add in some CCRCs in there. I haven't done that. Part of it was some of these people are in a networking group with me. I'll see them and I'm like, I need to fill because it's a lot to, all of this takes a lot of work for no pay, no offense. I mean, it just takes, so I've got to pay the bills in the meantime. So I'm always trying to juggle all the things. And so when I see them at something, I'm like, oh, let's get that nailed down. So that's what we'll do. Yeah. These are all independent living. Yes. We did Atria Oak Ridge October. So that was our first one. But I'll continue to add more in. We'll just do this on a regular basis. And so I've just got to have some conversations with some of the CCRCs and see who was, some of them respond to me and some don't. Yeah. Cyprus is terrible about responding to me. They've never responded to me. I've literally called and emailed them, and they will not even answer. And that was even when I was having a seminar, and I wanted to have the ownership model represented, and they would not respond. So I can't speak to that community. They must have enough business that they don't.
Yeah, some of them we encountered. There's a waiting list to have a talk with them. You'll send something in, or you'll call them and leave a message, and then they say, we'll get back to you in 2 or 3 weeks, just for a phone call. But they're that sure that they're just totally booked. They have wait lists. They don't need your business.
Yeah.
And you're not going to find, when you talk about negotiate, a lot of CCRCs, there's not going to be negotiation.
Yeah, true. That's one point I didn't make is, no. Independent, you have a better shot at negotiating, although those are getting fewer and farther between. It really depends on, if you're more interested in a smaller unit than a bigger unit, those you're going to have more power to negotiate potentially, and they may have a floor plan that doesn't sell as well, or a location in the building that's not as popular. So may face the parking lot or something. And so if you're okay with that, then you would get a better rate sometimes or be able to negotiate. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind one other thought, as you're touring, if it's a big building, how far away from the elevator are you, and are you okay with that? It's one of the things that I've heard from some of my clients. Oh gosh, I'm a little far from the elevator. I wasn't thinking about that. I'm fine now, but I may move to something closer when I get a little older. One of the people who said that to me is an 88-year-old. So it's all
Barbara's comment there about why go into a CCRC. You may not believe it or not, but it's actually affordability. You might look at the upfront fee to get in as between $200,000 and $500,000 to get in, but that's in today's dollars. And early dollars, when you're first getting in, they'll generally have $1,000 to $2,000 a month less rent, a month-to-month rent, than you'll see at an independent living place. And they've already factored in with that entrance fee a lot of the cost that goes into moving into assisted living or memory care or whatever. And their increase in the cost, their inflation rate, is going to be probably 3 or 4 points lower a year than it will be for a lot of the independent living places. And that becomes huge. If you talk to your financial advisor and say, run that number for me, you'll discover that a lot of these places, the independent living places, become affordable, or unaffordable, if you're in there for 10, 15 years, as opposed to the CCRC place. It just looks better out into the future. And the future is a huge deal. If you went, to go with your statistics, I read a thing where the average person, that's 70% that goes into assisted living, is going to be in there for the last 28 months of their lives on average. And you're talking $500,000 a year in future dollars. If you're 15 years from now, it gets huge. And if you're already tied in with a CCRC, you know their rate and how they're going to inflate, it really is a big difference. As opposed to when you're 90 years old and you're out looking for a place to put your mother or something.
And assisted living is all private pay. So is independent, unless you are someplace like Atria Oak Ridge and have a long-term care policy. Or if you're assisted living and have long-term care.
Yeah, the skilled nursing and the memory things are talking per diem now, $550 a day to be in those places.
Yeah.
I just had one caveat about the CCRCs. I have a friend who had her dad who needed some assistance, and they moved into the Cypress, and he was happy camper. Then he got to the point where he needed nursing care, and they hated the doctor. They were not able, he was too frail to move into his own private doctor, but the only option they had there was the doctor in the CCRC, and she ended up pulling him out and putting him elsewhere.
Wow.
So
Okay.
you are tied into what they're offering.
So Joan has a friend whose father went into the Cypress, and they hated the doctor. And because he's on staff there, that's the doctor, and he was too frail to go to a doctor off campus. So they ended up moving him to another community entirely. So that is one thing. You can certainly go see your own off campus. That's if you're able. Keep that in mind. Last thing, and I'm kind of running out of time here, we're a little over. There's a survey here. If you would like to receive the monthly newsletter and don't already receive that, please feel free to fill this out and let me know, either email or your address. I'll mail you the newsletter. They're free. They're a variety of subjects. If there's subjects that you'd like to see covered in the future, this is what I use as feedback so that I know what the interest level is for different classes that I schedule. And I schedule 6 months at a time. So I'll be scheduling middle of next spring. I'll be scheduling for the summer and fall and into the winter. So you can hand that back in to me if you have anything that you want to give me some feedback on. If you want the cost calculator, give me your email and let me know about that. And if there was anything else I mentioned, write it on there and then I'll know. Okay. Thank you all so much for so much participation. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful holiday if I don't see you at the Downsizers Club. Merry all the things.